everybody. Welcome to this week's Paddle Monster newsletter. This week, I'd like to talk to you about off-season training again. It's a theme that we've been visiting the last couple of weeks. And this week, I'd like to specifically to talk about the value of land-based aerobic work or cardio work to an off-season program. One of the things that the off-season provides us is the opportunity to do work that isn't on the water, because there are no races or very few races, or not major races, that are imminent. And so it gives us a little bit of flexibility in our training. We don't have to feel the need to be on the water sharpening and polishing and prepping for an important race when those important races aren't until the spring or the summer. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in what we can do. And it gives us the opportunity to do more work off of the water for a period of time to great benefit. Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about what those benefits are. So the first benefit is simply that it gives you a little bit of a break from being on the water to the degree that you were in the competitive season. And that can be useful to allow little nagging injuries to heal, to allow your connective tissue or your muscles to recover from the day-to-day repetitive motion and pounding that that paddling can lead to. And it allows you a little bit of a change in training stimulus that will lead to a greater response in terms of adaptations in your body and lead to increased fitness benefits. And it allows you a chance to sort of refresh mentally, because you've changed up what you're doing, and it, generally speaking, it creates a little bit of a break from paddling. And while you're focusing more on land-based work, you end up really getting hungry to get back on the water. And that's really beneficial, especially when the paddling season, the racing season in stand-up paddling, is so long. You can get on the water in the spring and in March or April, and you can be having your major races in late October or November. That's a long, long season. So, getting on the water right away in November, December, January, and hammering away 4 or 5 times a week or more really leads to the risk of getting stale later on when the paddling matters more than it does in the off season. And taking a bit of a break off the water and focusing on other types of work that are very beneficial, I think helps increase the chance of being able to do your best efforts on the water when it matters most, and reduces the risk of burnout or at least getting stale. So that's one reason that it's good to spend a little bit of time focusing a bit more on land-based work. But there's a physiological reason that we want to do it too. And this is what's really important. When we're paddling, we're using primarily upper body muscles. And yes, there's when I'm coaching, I'm really working at people to use their hips and their legs in their stroke. But you never use your hips and your legs in paddling to the degree that you would if you were running, if you were cycling, if you were cross-country skiing, if you were swimming, right? These activities use your leg muscles much, much more than paddling does. And when you use your leg muscles more, you're using a greater amount of muscle mass, right? So if you just look at your legs and look at your quads and your hamstrings, they're the biggest muscles in your body. And when those muscles are engaged and they're working at a high level, higher than they do when we're paddling, they have a tremendous appetite for oxygen in order to keep contracting and allow you to continue to do the movement that you're doing. And so when you're doing an activity that increases, that uses more leg work, it increases your body's demand for oxygen, and it makes your oxygen delivery systems, so your respiratory system, where you inhale air and you bring it into your lungs, and then the gas exchange in your lungs where oxygen is deposited into your bloodstream, carbon dioxide comes out of the bloodstream and into your lungs to be exhaled. Then that oxygen is carried to the working muscles by your cardiovascular system, right? Those are your oxygen delivery systems. And the greater demand that these big muscles in your legs are placing on your delivery systems for oxygen means that those systems have to work harder. And a case in point in this is a VO2 max test. So a number of years ago, when I was in the national canoe team, we did VO2 max testing. We did it a bunch of times, and we would do it on a treadmill. So we're running, so we're using our legs to a high degree. And then we would also do it either in the boat or on a paddling machine. And every time we did it, my VO2 max on a treadmill was in the mid to high 70s. And in the boat, it was in the high 40s, low 50s. And that's a really significant difference. And what that difference suggests is that there's a much greater demand placed on my oxygen delivery systems in running, because I'm using my legs more than I do paddling, than there is when I'm paddling. And so if you really want to train your oxygen delivery capabilities, the efficiency of your heart and lungs to deliver oxygen to working muscles, it really makes sense to spend some time doing land-based work that uses a greater amount of muscle mass, right? You've got a far better chance of really getting a high level of fitness by doing land-based work than you do strictly by paddling all the time, right? And so, as I alluded to earlier, the off season is the time to increase your land-based work, decrease your paddling work a little bit, because it's a long way until you're racing again. And you can afford to take some time off the water and focus in other areas on your fitness to great benefit. Okay. So I'd really like to impress upon all of you the need to take a small step back from your paddling work through the winter months and focus more on land-based cardio or aerobic work, right? So running, swimming, cross-country skiing, even things like a rowing machine, cycling, any types of cardio equipments you see in the gym. And the idea is that exercises that ask you to, A, use the most muscle mass possible. So in other words, use your legs more. And B, ask you to support your own body weight, because then you're also engaging all your stabilizing muscles. They're going to be the most effective exercises, right? So an activity like cross-country skiing, which is using your legs to a great degree and your upper body muscles to a great degree, and asking you to use all your supporting muscles, is really, really effective. But running's really effective as well in that regard. Swimming, although your body weight is supported in the water, is still really effective because it's a full body activity. Cycling, although you're not supporting your body weight in the same way you would if you were standing up, it's a big worker of your legs, so it's really good. And then there's activities that, maybe you don't use your legs as much, like some of the Stairmaster type machines in a gym. So they might not be quite as effective, but they're still asking you to use your legs more than you would if you were paddling. So, not all aerobic exercise is created equally. So consider the type of aerobic exercise that you're going to do. But it's really, really an important part of off-season training. You've got the time to do it. You've got the time to take a step back from the water and spend more time on land, developing your fitness to the highest level possible. And then when you get back on the water in the spring, you're starting from a point where your fitness level is incredibly high. And now all you need to do is convert that fitness that you've developed to your paddling motions. And so now you start to use your specific paddling muscles and you train them, to basically what you're doing is when you're training those muscles, you're creating adaptations in those specific muscles at the levels of the individual muscle fibers, which increase their ability to produce energy aerobically, right? But the delivery of oxygen to those cells, those muscle cells, is something that you worked on all winter to a level far greater on land than you could hope to do on the water. Okay. So I'll leave that with you. If you are ever having questions about how to incorporate this land-based work into your training program, or how much or what type of land-based work you should do, and or how to structure your program to incorporate all that work and still find some time on the water, I'm happy to provide that for you at paddlemonster.com. If you're frozen off the water for the entire winter, it's great. There's no need to despair, because obviously there's a lot of work that you can do to great benefit with this land-based aerobic work. But if you're somebody who is on the water, does have access to open water all winter, I strongly advise you to consider cutting back on your paddling, increasing your land-based aerobic work. You'll really see the benefits from it. And a little bit further down the road, and in at the end of January into February, you can start to get back on the water more regularly and cut back your land-based work a little bit. But it makes a huge difference. So please consider that. And if you need help setting it all up, I'm your guy, paddlemonster.com, and I'd love to help you. Okay? Have a great week, guys, and we'll talk to you next week.